Okay, hi there BTEC musicians. Here's another video to help you out with the Unit 1 exam of the BTEC First Award. Did a mock exam with my Year 11s just before Christmas, and I noticed that there was a pretty significant gap in their knowledge on a question to do with music publishing. And I thought to myself, I wonder why that gap is there. So I looked back through my old videos, and I have to say that I rather gloss over the music publisher in some of my revision materials, and I thought it would be important to update that and give as much information as possible. So this video's got two purposes. The first one is to focus on a music publisher and give some specific information about what they do, because I have noticed that actually they do come up quite regularly on papers when I was looking for questions to practice with, but I couldn't find an 8 marker to do with music publishing, so I've decided that I would write my own and I would put it on the end of this video to give us a bit more practice, because people are already asking me for more help with the 8 mark questions. The last video I did on the convex question seemed to go down quite well. People said that was useful and teachers said that was useful in their classrooms as well. So here we go, focusing on a music publisher and then some more 8 mark practice at the end. Here we go. What does a music publisher do? Well, we're quite familiar with the concept of a record label. Okay, an artist wants to become well known, so they sign to a record label who helps them developing their career. So we've got Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, Drake, they're all signed to major record labels, and the major record labels are pictured underneath. We've got Warner, Sony, Universal. They are known as the big 3. Okay, they are the major record labels. It was only quite recently actually that it would have been referred to as the big 4, because EMI were a major record label before they were bought out by one of the other 3. So you may see big 4, you may see big 3. These days it is the big 3, Warner, Sony and Universal, and they are responsible for developing their artists. But what about singers / composers? Because it's not just sort of popular musicians we're talking about. We can talk about composers of film music, people like Hans Zimmer, that kind of thing. But what about those people who write music and don't perform it themselves? Well, you probably haven't heard of this guy, Ross Golan. He's a major songwriter. He's written for Maroon 5, Justin Bieber, Nicki Minaj, Selena Gomez, Ariana Grande, One Direction, Jason Derulo, 5 Seconds of Summer, Snoop Dogg, Charlie Puth, Little Mix, and many more. He's very prolific. He's written a lot, okay, but you've probably never heard of him. So he would not sign to a record label. For him, and other songwriters and composers like him, their publisher is like their record label. So the publisher's job is to promote their work and get the big artists to perform it. Okay, so the publisher will have songwriters and composers signed to them, and they will go out there and they will publicize the work for them so that artists are able to perform that work. They will put their resources into developing the composer and songwriter like a record label would with an artist. And very helpfully, the big 3 record labels also happen to own the big 3 publishing companies. So publishing companies are sometimes called publishing houses, publishing companies, same sort of thing. We've got Warner Chappell, who are connected to Warner Music, Sony ATV, who are obviously associated with Sony, and Universal Music Publishing Group are very much part of Universal Music Group as well. The only slight thing to look out for there is that sometimes singer-songwriters or composers may have a different publisher from their label. So for example, the artist Anne-Marie, her publisher, the person who looks after her songwriting, is Sony ATV, or the company that looks after her songwriting is Sony ATV, but her label is Warner, and they look after her as an artist, as a singer. So just be careful with those. Just because you're signed to one for one thing doesn't mean you're automatically signed to them for the other. So, the journey of a song is a little slide put in here to help you understand how this process or this journey might work. There are 2 slightly different versions of this. I'm going to go through them. So Sia. Probably heard of Sia, well known for her own performances and recordings, but did you know that she also writes for others? For example, Fall Out Boy, Pink, Demi Lovato, Jennifer Lopez, Kelly Clarkson, Steps, Christina Aguilera, Jessie J, Britney Spears, Rita Ora and more. All of those artists have performed Sia songs. She's actually probably written far more songs than she has performed herself. So the top one in the teal boxes is the journey if she's going to write a song that she doesn't plan to perform herself, but she doesn't have somebody in mind for it. So Sia writes a song and she says, you know what, this is a good song, but I don't think I'm the right person for it. What am I going to do? I know, I will send it to my publisher. So she sends it to her publisher, and her publisher will then promote it. usually by sending it to record labels and saying, hey, record labels, you've got artists, we've got this song that's written by Sia, you all want it, it's going to be the next big hit, get your artists to record it. And they'll work out a deal where one of those artists would record it on their behalf, and the record label matches the song to the right artist. Okay, they make sure that they've got the right person lined up so that the song can be as successful as possible, and everybody in the entire chain, the songwriter, the artist, the record label, can maximize the profit. Because remember, at the end of the day, that's what the industry is all about, making money. Underneath in pink, there's a slightly different journey. Sometimes she would write a song with a particular performer in mind. Like, for example, Steps have just released a new tune, which is written by Sia, and she actually wrote that specifically for them. What the Future Holds, I believe it's called. Could be wrong about that. But she wrote it specifically with Steps in mind, sent it to her publisher, who then contacted Steps, their label, and said, Sia's written you a song, would you like to perform it? And they did. They were very pleased because she's a really good songwriter, she writes a catchy tune. They were pleased to perform her work. So two very slightly different journeys, but both very much going through the music publisher. So like the label, but for, like the record label, but for songs, rather than for the artists who perform them. Hope that makes sense. There's another thing which music publishers also get involved in, and that's sheet music. So publishers also produce sheet music so that people can buy the music and learn how to play songs. So for example, if you want to learn the latest Ian Audi piano piece, for example, you will probably go onto the internet, you will search for it, and you will find it legally, I hope, and you will get the music either through the post or you'll download it as a PDF. Somewhere along that process, if you buy a printed copy of the sheet music, either in physical form or as a download, then it's almost certainly come from a publisher. They will have typeset it, they will have made sure that it's accurate, they will have probably packaged it nicely and made it available for download or for physical purchase, and that is another role of the music publisher. The exception to this is our old friend piracy. We talked a lot about piracy in the royalties and collections agencies video. Sharing printed music that you haven't paid for, or even creating your own printed version of someone else's music, is illegal. If you've got fantastic ears and you decide that you want to write down, say, that Sia song that she's just released for Steps, then that is illegal, especially if you're going to sell it. Even if you're going to give it away, it's still not right, but if you're going to sell it, it's definitely illegal. The songwriters/composers are entitled to their royalty, just like the performers, and so sheet music should be purchased through sites that pay the royalties to the publishers, like Music Notes or Sheet Music Direct. There's just two websites that I've chosen there. They happen to be two of the biggest. So it's like going back to the royalties thing, it's really important that everybody along that chain is able to make money. If they can't make money, then they can't feed their family, and the music industry will not be able to support itself. And you might say, well, the music industry is massive, it's worth huge amounts of money, why is one piece of sheet music going to make any difference? Well, one piece of sheet music isn't going to make any difference, but if everybody thinks like that, you end up with no one paying for anything, and you end up with the music industry not making any money, which is, at the end of the day, its lead reason for existing. This question was the one that tripped my Year 11s up, and similar ones to this have appeared on a couple of papers over recent years. I was having a look. So it was a simple 1-mark question, but nobody in my Year 11 class managed to get it right. So identify one type of organisation which finds and develops composers, promotes music to performers and broadcasters, and typesets and produces sheet music. Now, there are 3 statements to read here. This is very important. You can see that individually, some can apply to other things. Quite a lot of my Year 11s put A&R rep for the first one, because finds and develops composers, you could say that actually the R in artists and repertoire is all about finding new talent of songwriters. So that could have been a correct answer. A lot of them put that down. But if you read on, promotes music to performers and broadcasters, okay, I suppose that could be an A&R rep as well. But the last one, typesets and produces sheet music, can only be a publisher. So it's a fantastic example of needing to read the whole question to make sure that you get your mark. Even in the 1-mark questions, make sure that you are reading things carefully. RTQ, read the question. Speaking of read the question, here's the 8-marker that I've had a go at. Now, this is not a real exam question, as I say, I have written it, but got quite a lot of practice over the years of writing these exam questions, and I've tried to frame it in a very similar way to one that came out about a record label. So, Elizabeth, name I picked at random, is a songwriter. She writes a song and sends it to an independent record label. So she doesn't go through a publisher in the first instance. The record label takes up the song and it becomes extremely successful. Elizabeth is then approached by a major music publisher offering a contract where she must write exclusively for them. Discuss and explain the advantages and disadvantages of accepting this contract. Now, it'd be very easy to say, well, there aren't any disadvantages. She's been approached by a major publishing firm and they're probably going to make her loads of money. There are no disadvantages. But if you only write about the advantages, you have an unbalanced answer and you are certainly not going to be grabbing all 8 marks. So how would I tackle this? Well, I always tell my year 11s to draw themselves a table. If it's an advantages, disadvantages question, it's my first step. Why? Because it helps you to make sure that you've got a balanced answer. You can see really easily that you've got a same number of advantages as disadvantages, and so you've got the correct number of marks and you can get everything you need to get full marks. So, it's an 8-mark question. That means we're going to need 4 points of content, right? To get the additional 4 marks, we're then going to need to explain each of them. So the first thing I've done is I've come up with 2 advantages and 2 disadvantages. That's 4 points of content in total. So the advantages I've gone for, and I was just thinking off the top of my head, using my logical brain and my knowledge of what I know from the course. So a publisher, like a record label, has lots of resources. So signing to them could lead to lots more opportunities. I hope that that is an obvious one. Another advantage I've gone for, having a big name publisher gives prestige, right? It makes people look at your name and go, oh, well, they're signed to Sony ATV or they're signed to Warner. They must know what they're doing, otherwise they wouldn't have got that deal in the first place. It gives you prestige, which can then lead to more opportunities or a better reputation. Reputation in the music industry is very, very important. But, as I've already said, we can't just write about the advantages. We need some disadvantages as well. So, it's an exclusive contract. It says that in the question. So if she's tying herself into one person, is she missing out on possible other opportunities? Could other publishers offer even more? In the long term, this could potentially actually limit her income / her fame. Okay? Because she might have limited herself. She might have signed up too early perhaps. An even bigger deal might come along in the future. Another disadvantage, signing with a major publisher, or record label for that instance, creates pressure / expectations or can even put restrictions on what the artist can or can't write. If you're signed up and you're having to do something, if you're having to write music on a regular basis and you've got deadlines and all sorts of things, it can become quite hard to be creative. Some people find it hard to work to that kind of pressure. Some people thrive on it, but it can be a disadvantage. They may even say, they're a major publisher, they might say, we want you to write in a particular way. You know, we only want you to write in the way that you are well known for. Or we want you to sound like this particular person, or we want you to try and compete with this particular person. And that can be a major disadvantage. You might not be able to write in the way that the publisher is trying to get you to go in, and that might limit your creative output. So there's our content marks, all 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 advantages, 2 disadvantages. That is not enough. That is only 4 marks worth of stuff, and we want 8 marks. So, what have I done next? I have explained, this is the green text, each answer. I've gone a little bit further and a little bit more detail to try and explain why these advantages and disadvantages are important. So, the publisher having lots of resources, which could lead to more opportunities. Publishers would benefit from additional publicity, opportunities to work with particular big name artists or other industry professionals like producers or recording technicians. So having lots of resources will mean that doors can open. They're going to have contacts, they're going to have the resources, they're going to have the money to put them behind and potentially sign you up with bigger artists for you to work with as a songwriter. Having a big name publisher gives prestige, which can lead to more opportunities or a better reputation. And prestige lasts for a whole career, I've said in my explanation. It doesn't just last for 5 minutes, okay? If you have signed with Sony ATV, that prestige is always with you. It's going to last potentially well beyond the length of the contract. It could set Elizabeth up for years to come. So just a little bit of extra explanation there. How about the disadvantages? The exclusive contract. It could be better to remain freelance, as Elizabeth could still work with this publisher and other publishers. Okay, so I just thought about it for an extra second. I thought, well, just because she turns down this contract doesn't automatically close the door to working with that publisher. It might. They might say, you know what, you've turned down our contract, we don't want to work with you. But if she's really in demand and really successful, then they might come back to her and say, you know what, you didn't like our exclusive contract, but maybe we can give you some more opportunities, and then she can work with other publishers as well. So in order to make it worth it, it would have to be a very lucrative contract. So even if she says no to the original deal, they might come back, she might be able to negotiate with them. So that's going just a little bit further in terms of the explanation. What about the last one? Signing with a major publisher creates pressure and expectations. Well, I've said what I pretty much said in the video just a moment ago. Placing restrictions on artists can limit their creativity or ruin their reputation for being a sellout. Okay, we've all heard that phrase being used around the music industry. Oh, that person's writing for that person. What a sellout. What an easy opportunity. I would say that it's a massively overused phrase actually, but it's still valid. Elizabeth needs to be confident that she will be able to keep doing what has already made her successful, because if she's suddenly unable to produce songs, or she can't write in the way that her her publisher wants her to, then that's going to cause her problems. So there we go. We have 4 points of content and 4 points of explanation. Job done, dusted, finished, 8 marks all the way. No, not quite. One very, very important step. You should always conclude this type of question. If there's advantages and disadvantages, you should look at what you've written and you should come down on the side of one or the other, as follows. So, there is nothing wrong with expressing a bit of a personal opinion so long as you've backed it up with what you've written above. If your personal opinion completely doesn't match what's been said in the rest of your answer, that's going to be a problem. But, based on what I've written, I believe that Elizabeth should take the contract so long as the conditions are right. She needs to be sure that the contract is lucrative, that's well paid enough, that she is not missing out on other opportunities, and also that she will be allowed to maintain her own style. But it would be very brave of her to turn down a deal with a major publisher, as it can lead to fantastic opportunities. It can. Being signed with a major record label or a major publisher can be brilliant, but you need to make sure that you've done as much negotiating as you can, you've got the best deal for you, rather than the best deal for the publisher or for the record label. So there we go. 8 marks. I believe that would give you a full 8-mark answer. It's balanced, it's answered the question, it has a conclusion, and hopefully it's been useful. If you are taking the exam on January the 7th, very best of luck to you. Remember to read all the questions, don't leave any answers blank, and I shall see you again hopefully in the future for another video. While you're here, that old YouTube classic, please don't forget to like and subscribe, as it does help the channel out and will help it to reach more people who are taking the BTEC First Award.